Every morning at 6:45, before the lights even warmed up in the office, I'd be at my desk, coffee in hand, ready to build the future. I wasn't just another tech analyst, I was the analyst, the brain behind most of our company's successful automation systems. From streamlining inventory processes to predictive algorithms for customer behavior, my fingerprints were on nearly everything. But if you glanced at the company's performance reports or award boards, you'd never see my name. You'd see hers. Rebecca Lynn, the golden girl of the department. Always perfectly dressed, sharp-tongued, and somehow always at the center of attention. She had a talent, not for innovation, but for observation. She watched, waited, and pounced the moment I showed something promising. Whether it was a new data visualization method or a machine learning script that reduced error rates by 20%, she found a way to get it into the right hands, with her name on it. At first, I told myself it was harmless. Maybe she didn't realize she was stepping on toes. But that lie unraveled quickly. I'll never forget the moment things truly turned. I had spent 3 months developing an AI-based forecasting model. It was built in my free time, on weekends, with no help, no guidance, just me and my laptop. I'd mentioned it vaguely during a lunch break once, not even showing her anything concrete. A week later, in our quarterly strategy meeting, Rebecca presented her new forecasting initiative. Slide by slide, she regurgitated every detail of my work, even the mistakes I had already debugged. My hands clenched under the table as the execs nodded with impressed smiles and took notes. The final sting? Promotion, her promotion. I should have spoken up. I should have said something. But the truth was, I had no proof. She'd altered the file names, stripped metadata, and conveniently, our email exchanges didn't cover the final code, just the early ideas. It would have been her word against mine. And her words always sparkled. Months passed. More ideas stolen. More pats on her back. And slowly, I began to disappear in the eyes of management. My performance reviews became adequate, then inconsistent. Meanwhile, Rebecca rose like a balloon with no strings. I became the guy who just supported her vision. But I held on. I believed talent would eventually shine through. I believed integrity still had value in corporate America. Then came Friday. It started like any other day, cold coffee, unopened Slack messages, and a blinking cursor waiting for brilliance. I was finishing a report on client churn prediction, one I'd been refining for weeks, when an HR rep and my supervisor walked into my cubicle. Their faces were unreadable, but I knew something was off. "Can we speak in the conference room?" Inside, the room felt colder than usual. A printed email sat on the table. They claimed it came from my account, a draft riddled with inappropriate comments about a project lead and leaks about sensitive client data. The words didn't even sound like me, but the timestamp lined up with my login history. I denied it, of course, but my voice felt small. Even the HR rep didn't look convinced. Rebecca sat across the table, arms folded, eyes wide with faux concern. She didn't say a word, but she didn't need to. Her expression said everything. "This is the end for you." They asked for my badge, my laptop, my keycard. Just like that, 5 years of work were reduced to a box and a cold goodbye. But as I walked out, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel panic. I smirked. Because they had no idea what was coming. What Rebecca didn't know was that I'd grown tired months ago. Tired of waiting for fairness. Tired of having my light dimmed. So I did what I always do. I got smart. I started keeping records. Not just the obvious ones, emails, project drafts, and code, but screen recordings, timestamps, folder history. I created backups of backups. I even wrote a script that would ping a cloud archive every time she opened, copied, or edited one of my files. It all lived on an external server under a nondescript name, tucked away behind firewalls only I could bypass. And there was more. I had developed something on the side. A predictive system that could revolutionize the way the company did client retention and upselling. It was beyond what anyone in our department had even considered. But I didn't share it, not with Rebecca, not with management. I let them think I'd grown quiet, maybe even lost my edge. Let them underestimate me. As I walked to the elevator that Friday, security escort by my side, I tapped a small notification on my smartwatch. One simple message sent to a private inbox I'd been preparing for weeks. It contained everything: proof, documentation, timelines, and a full executive summary. Subject line: for Monday morning, the truth. Because Monday wasn't going to be just another day at the office. It was going to be the beginning of Rebecca Lynn's unraveling. The weekend passed slowly. Not because I was nervous, because I wasn't, but because I wanted to savor every hour before the storm hit. After being kicked out of the company I helped build, you'd expect someone like me to be devastated. But I wasn't. If anything, I felt liberated. I didn't have to keep pretending anymore. I didn't have to force a smile every time Rebecca got credit for a system I designed. I didn't have to work weekends while she spent hers posting cocktails and fake leadership quotes on LinkedIn. No more corporate games. Now, the pieces were finally in place. I spent Saturday reviewing everything one last time. The external drive I'd created, named something completely boring like tax_docs_2016, contained over 4 years of receipts. Every innovation. Every email where Rebecca fished for information. Every document she copied and rebranded. I even had time-stamped Slack logs and screen recordings of her pulling up my shared folders minutes before big meetings. She thought she was careful. But arrogance is loud. Sunday morning, I brewed my coffee with an unusual calm. I sat by my small apartment window, watching the world move on as if nothing had happened. But I knew what was coming. And I knew who would be blindsided by it. But this wasn't just about revenge. It was about closure. About reclaiming the dignity that was slowly chipped away, month after month, meeting after meeting. I remembered one particular afternoon about a year ago. We were preparing for a client pitch, a big one. I had worked for 3 weeks on a machine learning model that would adjust marketing in real time based on user behavior. I was proud of it. It was the kind of thing that could change the company's future. But just minutes before the presentation, Rebecca pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I think it's best I present the tech stuff too. You get nervous in front of execs, and I don't want to risk the deal." I didn't argue. I let her take the spotlight. She barely understood half of what she was saying, but it didn't matter. She spoke with confidence, threw in a few buzzwords, and smiled the whole way through. The deal was sealed. She got another bonus. I got a mention in an email. A 2-line, "Thanks for your help." It wasn't just betrayal. It was systematic erasure. But I kept going. Because somewhere deep down, I still believed talent would be rewarded. That hard work would beat politics. That meritocracy wasn't just a corporate myth. Until Friday. Getting fired broke that illusion for good. And oddly enough, I was thankful for it. It forced me to stop hoping for validation from people who'd already decided I was expendable. So I stopped playing by their rules. Around noon on Sunday, I made my final move. I sent a batch of emails. First, to the company's board members. Clean, concise, respectful, just enough to get their attention. Subject: Intellectual property misattribution and data integrity risk. Please review before Monday's meeting. Inside was a summary and a secure link to the full evidence folder. I didn't rant. I didn't point fingers blindly. I simply laid out the facts. I didn't even name Rebecca until page 3. Next, I sent a slightly edited version to 2 business journalists who specialized in corporate whistleblower stories. I didn't need the whole world to know, just the right people. And finally, a message to a rival tech company. One whose recruiter had once reached out to me 2 years ago, saying, "If you ever get tired of being underappreciated, we'd love to talk." I replied with a short note and attached my portfolio, including the predictive system I had never shared with my former employer. Then I shut my laptop, leaned back, and smiled. That evening, while most of the city was winding down for the workweek, I went for a walk. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic. Just me in a hoodie, strolling past the glow of restaurants and apartment windows, listening to the quiet hum of the night. I thought about Rebecca. About what Monday morning would be like for her. Would she smile as she walked into the office, thinking she'd won? Would she sit at her desk and sip her overpriced latte, opening her inbox with that same smug look? Would she even read the subject lines before realizing her world was about to implode? Probably not. People like Rebecca rarely see the fall coming. They think they're too smart to protect it. But the higher they climb on stolen ladders, the harder they crash when the foundation crumbles. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because I had ruined someone, but because I had finally stopped letting someone ruin me. And Monday was just a few hours away. Monday began with chaos. I wasn't in the building, but I didn't need to be. The fallout started early, around 7:45 a.m., to be exact. That's when the first board member opened my email. 10 minutes later, the link to the evidence folder had been forwarded to the company's legal counsel. By 8:30, 2 executives had flagged it to the CEO. By 9 o'clock, Rebecca's smile was gone. I watched it unfold in real time through LinkedIn activity. People from the company, some I hadn't spoken to in months, began liking and sharing articles from the same 2 business journalists I had contacted. One headline stood out: Anonymous whistleblower reveals internal theft and data misuse at mid-sized tech firm. They didn't name me. They didn't need to. The article laid everything bare: the misattribution of work, the unethical use of internal systems, and the manipulation of workplace dynamics to suppress real talent. But the most damning part? The evidence attached. Screenshots, timestamps, code metadata, emails. More than enough to spark an internal audit. More than enough to force a conversation. And I wasn't done yet. Around noon, I got a response from the recruiter at the rival company. Short and direct: "We've read the portfolio. The CTO wants to speak to you today. Can you be available at 3 p.m.? I didn't hesitate. I cleared my schedule, which, thanks to recent events, was already empty. When 3 o'clock came, I joined the video call. The CTO, a man named Marcus with sharp eyes and a calm voice, didn't waste time on small talk. "I've gone through your predictive system. It's impressive. Honestly, it's ahead of what most of our team is working on. You built this entirely on your own?" "Yes," I said. "Over the past year. On my personal time." He nodded, clearly impressed. "You're exactly the kind of mind we need here. And we actually respect original work. How soon can you start?" For the first time in what felt like years, I didn't feel like I was being offered a lifeline out of pity. This wasn't charity. This was recognition. "Give me a week," I replied. "I want to finish something first." Because I wasn't quite finished yet. By Tuesday morning, the internal investigation had begun. HR sent out mandatory interviews. The legal department locked down access to shared drives. People who once blindly followed Rebecca started distancing themselves. She had built her entire persona on the illusion of brilliance. Once the illusion cracked, no one wanted to be standing beside her. She tried to fight it, of course. Tried to spin the narrative, claim I had doctored the documents or misinterpreted events. But the evidence was overwhelming. Everything matched, down to the minute. Files that had been downloaded from my folders. Project proposals copied and reworded. One Slack message in particular became infamous. Rebecca asking me, "Can you send me that model again? I need to make sure I get it right before presenting." Timestamp: 2 hours before her big presentation. That one message alone destroyed her credibility. By Wednesday, I got another message from an old coworker still at the company. It was short but satisfying. "She's been placed on leave pending termination. You didn't just win. You burned the whole playbook." But I didn't feel like celebrating. Not really. Because this wasn't just about Rebecca. It was about a culture that allowed someone like her to thrive. That rewarded performative leadership over actual work. That used people like me, quiet, focused, driven, as stepping stones. Still, watching her empire crumble brick by stolen brick? That part was satisfying. That night, I sat on my balcony with a drink and a laptop, drafting a thank you email to the recruiter. It wasn't just a new job, it was a new beginning. A place where I'd be building, not surviving. A place where I wouldn't have to hide my ideas like secret recipes. Before logging off, I checked the company's internal blog one last time. There was a post titled, "Upholding Ethics and Integrity in the Workplace." No names. No blame. Just a carefully worded statement about reassessing leadership standards and protecting intellectual property. But I knew what it meant. Everyone did. And somewhere across town, in a quiet apartment far less polished than her Instagram feed, Rebecca knew too. Monday ended not with a bang, but with silence. The kind that follows when someone realizes the game they were playing is over, and they lost. A week later, I walked through the doors of my new office. It was modern, sleek glass walls, open space, quiet buzz, but more importantly, it felt different. Not because of the coffee machines or the skyline view. It felt different because I was walking in as me. Not hidden behind someone else's shadow. Not someone's backup. Not the ghostwriter of success stories I'd never get to tell. Marcus, the CTO, greeted me personally. I've already told the team about your project. They're excited to meet the mind behind it. I nodded with a quiet smile. Let's build something better. As I settled into my new workspace, I couldn't help but reflect. It hadn't been easy. Watching my career nearly get erased. Being betrayed by someone I once trusted. Losing my job over someone else's lies. It had almost broken me. But instead of breaking, I rebuilt. And Rebecca? Well, she disappeared from the professional world as quickly as she rose in it. Her LinkedIn was wiped clean. No job title. No recent activity. Just silence. A few industry blogs speculated, but no one really chased the story. The company issued a vague statement about internal restructuring and lessons learned. The public moved on. But the people inside knew. And she knew. I didn't gloat. I didn't post a viral rant or share a celebratory update. That wasn't my style. My victory wasn't in headlines, it was in freedom. Freedom to work without fear. Freedom to speak without being silenced. Freedom to finally create without looking over my shoulder. At my new company, I found people who listened. Who didn't pretend to understand my work just to take credit. When I presented my first project during a strategy meeting, the team applauded, not because I had impressed them, but because they saw potential and respected it. That was all I ever wanted. One evening, while cleaning out an old hard drive, I stumbled upon a folder titled Q2 Concepts. Inside were early sketches and drafts of projects I never submitted, ideas I shelved out of fear Rebecca would steal them. One of them, a tool for real-time fraud detection using AI behavior mapping, felt especially relevant. I smiled. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very tools I designed to catch digital manipulation ended up catching a real-world manipulator. That night, I added something new to the folder. A simple note. Just 3 words, never again silenced. A few days later, I got a message from someone I hadn't heard from in years, Julia, a former coworker who had also left the company quietly. She'd read the article. I always knew something was off. I'm glad you spoke up. You gave the rest of us courage. I sat with that message for a while. Because sometimes doing the right thing doesn't just heal you, it helps others heal too. My story could have ended with bitterness. With me fading out of the tech world, defeated and disillusioned. But I chose something different. I chose to fight smart. To be patient. To let the truth do the heavy lifting. And in doing so, I didn't just expose a fraud. I reclaimed my name. The scars are still there. Invisible but real. There are moments I hesitate, moments I doubt, moments I feel the weight of all that time I spent holding back. But then I remember Monday. The day the lies fell apart. The day I stopped being a victim and became the author of my own story. Now, when people ask why I left my last job, I just smile and say, creative differences. Because how do you explain to someone that after years of silence, the most powerful thing you can do is speak? And when you speak the truth, you don't just change your career. You change your future.